webinar about the MSc in Insights and Innovation. My name is Peter Robbins, and I'm your MC for the morning. I just wanted to welcome you all. We might just hold for a moment until everybody has joined in. We have a chat function. I hope that do let me know if you pop it up on chat if you can't hear anything. And maybe I should start by saying that if any of you are wondering, given the current COVID-19 ambiguity that surrounds everything, whether this course will be running or whether it might be delayed, we've been scenario planning, both DCU and Bord Bia, and both organizations are totally committed to running this program. There are, of course, uncertainties as to whether the campus will be open, but this program admits we'll be taking only 15 people. So therefore, it's a relatively small group, and we have lecture rooms that can hold 300 people. So therefore, we're quite confident that we'll be able to manage it even under the most rigorous social distancing protocols. But even if that were impossible, the program will begin in an online version. So I might kick off, if I may. This program is part of Bord Bia's Talent Academy, which is a broad suite of programs that are intended to fill a skills gap across this industry. And our guest this morning, Tom Tully, will tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes. My name is Peter Robbins. I'm the academic lead for the program, and I have spent many years researching, working in teaching, lecturing, and consulting in the world of new product development and innovation. So I've worked with and for some of the biggest companies in the world on helping to generate new, exciting, successful products. So let's begin. The Irish market for food and drink has experienced phenomenal growth in the last decade. The exports are up by over 65%, and that's a figure of over 5 billion. And Irish farmers and Irish food and beverage companies have shown extraordinary innovation in opening up new markets at home and abroad. But now the industry is at a kind of an inflection point, because doing more of the same is unlikely to lead to the same level of success. Documents like Foodwise 2025 and Ireland's Future Job Strategy commits the industry to ambitious but achievable growth targets. And equally, this strategy that I have in front of you is aiming for the growth in sustainable employment from the industry. Now, in response to this, Bord Bia's strategy is about delivering this growth through differentiated, sustainable growth. And it's important that differentiated means capable of being strongly branded and having a compelling value proposition. And that's what this program is all about. But let me just share a couple of thoughts about why right now it can't just be business as usual, why we need to raise the game at new product development and innovation. So first of all, there's been a huge surge in protectionism around the world as political ideology in certain places moves to a more right-wing isolationist position, advocating protectionist measures. Then we come to our nearest neighbor and our most important market, and losing them from the EU is a significant blow from the industry. We're facing more and more competition in all of the sectors, food, beverage, and horticulture. And that's why we don't want to be part of this generic commoditization. That's why the Bord Bia strategy is underpinned by differentiated growth. we've got the issue of regulatory compliance is becoming more and more time consuming and costly for business. And probably the biggest trend of all is the need for sustainability and the need to balance the requirements of the food industry with sustainable development goals. Now, Bord Bia's Origin Green is an award-winning example of how to bring this strategy to life. We then have the issue of many markets moving away from beef. And then we have lifestyle trends, people increasingly moving to live in cities. And that has implications not just for the type of food we supply and the distribution channels, but for portion sizes and supply chain. But happily, many more people are eating healthily. And in our R&D organizations in the large food companies, we're looking at healthier versions of their favorite brands. People are looking for gluten-free or sugar-free, etc. And then, as if that wasn't enough, we have to deal with an environment of COVID-19. And all these factors contribute to an operating environment that really demands innovation. It needs people who can see beyond the obvious solutions, who can think more widely and generate possibilities that are novel, that are original, appropriate, commercial, and scalable. So that's why, together with Bord Bia, we have designed this program to focus on insights and innovation. So the slide you're looking at now shows you a snapshot of the modules that are included in this master's. Modules that teach you the tools and skills of creativity and innovation. Modules that equip you with the capacity to be able to spot a compelling insight and to drive that into a value proposition and some sort of tangible innovation asset. But then you've got to have the transversal skills, the capacity in an organization to propose change, to persuade people to invest in new products and service ideas. Those skills of leadership, of team working, of even storytelling, making sure that you're telling a compelling story about the ideas you're promoting. When you study innovation, when you unpack the concept, there are three elements in any innovation process. The first bit is the generation of the ideas. How do you finesse the best ideas and generate novel, original, compelling ideas? And so we have a whole series of modules that are around that. How can we help you in the firms that you'll be working in generate novel, original, compelling, distinctive commercial ideas? And then the second bit, after you've generated a palette of ideas, is more sort of convergent thinking, converging around the ones that have the most possibilities in the market, the ones that are likely to have the most power, the ones that will have the most traction with consumers. So that's around strategy, market research, and feasibility research, keeping the culture of the business creative, and then managing to see if you can amplify the appeal of the ideas in a digital age. And then we move to the third phase of any innovation project, which is the diffusion of innovation, the making customers lean forward and finding that part of the market in which your appeal will be greatest and crossing the chasm. So that's done through branding and marketing, using innovation concepts in a practical way. So these are the three phases, and our modules fit into all of those things. In each of those, you'll be working with a firm, and we will be choreographing the assignments so that they're consistent with the needs of the firm. So a lot of your assignments will be looking at areas like sustainability. They'll be looking at things like taking the DNA of the firm or of the brand and seeing if it can be exploded into different geographies, looking at the digital enhancement and insight-led innovation. So most of the theory will be layered back towards your company, looking at these themes. So this is how our program shapes up. Right now, we're talking to you, we're talking to people, we're running webinars, and we would like you to apply. And the next phase will be that we will look through the applications, and we'll call people to interview, and ultimately we'll select 15 people. And when that happens, we move to the stage we've called the green, with the green box there. We bring people into DCU and we run a couple of immersion sessions so that they're familiar with the core skills of design thinking and how to help an organization develop a roadmap of innovation. During this time, DCU has a lot of assets on campus, such as a family business center, of which many of the family businesses are in the food industry. We have the Brexit Institute. We have connections with some of the leading design thinking companies and some of the leading food companies. So we're hoping, if the conditions are relaxed, that we'll be able to be taking you to Bord Bia and Diageo, etc. Then from January, you go to work in a company that's chosen for you by Bord Bia, in consultation with you, of course. So we hope that you wouldn't be coming from Kerry and working in Donegal. But we do have to legislate for the companies that engage, and we cannot promise you that you'll have something on your doorstep. So you're going to be working in placement from January right through for 15 months, from January 2021 up until March 2022. And be doing modules 4 days a month, coming to DCU, being released from your firm and coming to DCU to do modules 4 days a month. Over the summer, then, you'll be working towards a big dissertation, which will be your capstone exercise, and will hopefully be done on the topic of some major launch planned or some major innovation proposition for your firm. So we've very carefully designed this, both in the content and in the delivery. The content, we have connections in DCU with the biggest online learning organization in the world, FutureLearn. We have a Lego lab. We have a campus of exciting companies being incubated and accelerated. And we work with leading organizations around design thinking. On top of that, DCU is industry's university, and of course, Bord Bia work hand in glove with the most professional practitioners in the world in food and drink innovation. So we'll be showing you, and hopefully physically taking you to places like Diageo to get a sense of what's best in class in food and beverage innovation. We'll be taking you to some of the leading agencies who work for multiple clients across loads of different sectors, and we'll be showing you how they approach the innovation process. We'll be going to the big companies, the big food companies in Ireland, hearing from the people in charge of those functions and learning how they do it and how they take something from the heartbeat of an idea through to the high street of a launch in different countries around the world. Of course, we'll want to embed a few skills and insights with you around how shoppers behave and the sort of cognitive processes they go through before purchasing things. And there is a leading practitioner in shopper insight and category insight. And as part of your induction, we'll be giving you master classes in this area. So we would like you to email an application, a CV and a short letter of application through to bordbia@dcu.ie. And we'll be sifting through those applications and very carefully, and be calling people for interview, and then in July we'll be offering people places on the program. I think DCU is extraordinarily excited about this program. It is possibly the most exciting program we've got, but I can't say that too loud in the DCU environment. And we would love to have your expression of interest. But now I'm going to hand over to my friend, Mr. Tom Tully from Bord Bia, to give you a flavor of why they're involved and why they think it's important.
Thank you, Peter. Hopefully everybody can hear me. And good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be talking to you this morning. So as Peter had alluded to, I'm with Bord Bia, so I'm the industry talent manager at Bord Bia, and I've been working in the talent space for uh, a number of years at this stage, with previously with a lot of multinational companies before I joined Bord Bia, all with an eye to growing and developing executive talent. And I do that as head of Bord Bia's Talent Academy, of which I'll give you more information in a minute. But in terms of, yeah, Peter, you can scroll on there. In terms of Bord Bia itself, just before I go into the Talent Academy, um, Bord Bia can often be misunderstood in terms of our remit and what we do. So I just wanted to clarify that just from the outset to give you a better understanding of what we do. So for those who aren't overly familiar with us, we are Ireland's food and drink marketing agency. We're a semi-state, so we're primarily funded by the government, but also we do get some funding from industry as well. So it's a marriage of both, and it's been a very successful marriage to date. As Peter had alluded to, we've had successive years of growth since 2010 onwards. Um, in terms of what we do, we're probably better known abroad nearly than we are in Ireland, because abroad is where our home patch is. We market Irish food and drink internationally. And so that's primarily what we do, but we do have a number of other things that we look at. As Peter had mentioned, we look at the whole area of sustainability, and we run Origin Green, which is the world's only sustainability program, where we essentially audit our producers from farm to fork. And that's a very unique program that we have that is not that's probably coveted and looked at jealously from others around the world as well. So something we're very proud of. We also have an area of Bord Bia that focuses on consumer insights, ethnographic studies, looking at trends in the market and giving our industry a heads up as to what's coming down the line, so that they can be positioned as best as possible to meet future consumer needs. And that part of Bord Bia is called the Thinking House, and it is one of the areas that had spurred this program that you're very interested in currently, because they look at, I suppose, best practices to drive coherent thinking in how you decipher consumer insight and then turn that into marketing gold, essentially. So that the Thinking House that is part of Bord Bia had a very heavy hand in devising this program also. And then the final thing, Peter, you can go to the next slide there, which is the Bord Bia Talent Academy. So just to give you some sense of our pedigree in this space, we have been running in different guises forms of executive development within the food industry for well over 20 years. And when I joined Bord Bia, we had decided to rebrand it somewhat. So we have rebranded it as the Bord Bia Talent Academy. But we have, in any one year, we have about 85 students across a whole range of different programs, of which the DCU Insights and Innovation program would be one. We work with a number of universities to provide academic development and a work placement element. And so we've been very successful in this to date. As I said, we've been running it for so many years, and we have a very high employment rate post our programs as well. It's up in the 70% range in terms of employment within the industry after leaving our programs, which is probably unprecedented across other sectors. This program we're really excited about. It's the fifth program in our Talent Academy. Again, we run all these programs with prestigious universities, of which we consider DCU to be a leader in this field. And the hope and the aim for Bord Bia in running this program is to embed different thinking within our sector. As Peter had alluded to, doing things as we have been won't get us to where we want to go. And we want to bring in people who are going to be agents of change within the food and drink industry. People who are going to be able to drive a culture change somewhat as well. Because when you bring new thinking, you need to be able to influence and change and bring people along with you as well. So our aim is that that hopefully if you were successful and we placed you in a company, you'll work on very, very interesting innovation projects, but you'll also be that agent of change that, you know, if you then leave the company at the end of the program, that you've left a legacy that will stay with us in the industry as well. And that would be very much our hope. As Peter said, and Peter, you can go to the next slide. The last time around when we ran this program, it was the first time we ran the program, and we had 9 companies involved. Obviously, we're now expanding it to 15, so we'll grow this number that you see on screen. But these were some of the companies that were involved last time around. So Ireland's food and drink exports are very much dominated by, I suppose, dairy and meat sector, but coming up on the rails and growing somewhat are our prepared consumer goods. So that's your all the stuff that you would see on the, you know, the chocolate aisles and et cetera, so all the other stuff that you see in the supermarket. And also in terms of some of our alcohol clients are obviously doing a lot more activity than they would have been doing 10-15 years ago. But it is fair to say that probably all of our placements are going to be predominantly food orientated. Alcohol clients are probably in the minority among our client base, so it would predominantly be food. And it would be a mix of large and SME companies, as you can see on screen. Last time around, you know, you have the companies that you probably already have heard of, which would be Bord Bia and Kerry, obviously, and perhaps Dawn Meats and Keepack as well. But then we had more interesting placements, such as like Silver Hill Duck, who export premium duck, particularly to the Far East, and have to be seen to be believed in terms of how innovative their setup is. Their factory is very futuristic in terms of how it operates, and they're constantly innovating and looking at new ways they can not only produce their product and market and export it, but also how they market it innovatively as well. So that just is to give you a flavor, I guess, of the placement companies we had last time around. But we would hope to expand on them. And again, in terms of location, we obviously work with the participants on the program to see what can work best for all parties involved, to ensure it's a mutually beneficial placement for everyone. So I'll stop there just to take any questions that anyone might have, if that's okay with you, Peter.
You know what? Are you okay if we allow Orla to talk and then take any questions at the very end?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll tell you, for those of you interested in applying, we thought the best insights might come from somebody who was in your shoes just a couple of years ago and who has applied and who has forged a very successful career in the food industry. Certainly largely as a consequence to the program. So I'm really delighted to introduce you to Orla Brady, who's now working with Valio Foods. We just asked Orla to talk for 10 minutes maybe about why she applied, how she found the experience, and kind of what's happened since. So good morning, Orla.
Good morning. Hi, Peter. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be part of your webinar, and yeah, really happy to be able to speak and hopefully shed some light on, as you say, my own experience of the program, and the benefits then of having completed it. So I'd be really happy, and I'd encourage any prospective applicants, anyone who's listening to this either live or as a recording, to absolutely feel free to reach out either during the webinar or afterwards, I know sometimes these situations can sometimes be difficult to ask questions in the heat of it, so please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help. So yeah, just to kind of start on over probably 2.5 years ago at this stage, and when I started my application, my background before I applied was in food. So I was a food science graduate. My undergrad degree was food science, which I think is interesting because I didn't, although I had worked in food businesses and family food businesses, I had no formal business background or marketing or that any formal background in that area. So my love and passion was for food, is for food still, and that would have been my experience in the industry for about 6 or 7 years, up to the application process. So my role would have been in new product development, and in project management in that area in NPD. So that would often involve generating new products and new concepts for the Irish and international food market. But I suppose a lot of what I did would often be made up of ideas and concepts and food products that the factory or that the business could make, and could kind of roll out, maybe rather than necessarily what the consumer or what the user actually wanted. So when the course popped up on my radar over 2 years ago, I was at a point where I knew that I wanted to pursue further education, but I hadn't really found the right course yet that I felt could offer me all the things that I wanted or that I was looking for. So obviously it was progression in the area that I love. So within the food industry, that's an industry that I love working in and I wanted to continue in. But also including a balance to work and study, because I knew that I didn't want to take a step back from the working environment. I knew that I wanted to keep my finger on the pulse and stay in the industry, and for me it wasn't an option personally to step away from that. I loved the industry and I wanted to make sure that I was keeping current and making sure that I continue to be involved in that. And then I also wanted a qualification that I knew would mean something and would be desirable to employers, and that, that although it meant as much to me, I suppose, as it did to prospective employers. So essentially I wanted to learn how to innovate, and in a better and different way, to kind of give me a point of difference for my own progression, and then also to give my CV a point of difference. And I think that this course was the only course that had popped up on my radar that kind of ticked all those boxes. So I pursued the application process, much similar to the application process that's happening with this round. And from that initial application stage, I knew that this was the course that was for me. This was the master's that I knew that had piqued my interest. The balance, as I say, between the academic study, the real world work placement, and the industry connection through Bord Bia, for me, it was just a course like no other. So I suppose just to break those three elements down, if I start maybe with the academic and my experience with the academic study first. So I feel that, as the program commenced and as it ran and as I became immersed in it, I think it was clear to me and to the other students, the other candidates, that we were really at the forefront of a new way of thinking and innovating, which hadn't really been explored in the food industry. And I think that was really exciting and a real privilege as well to be involved in. The course content was challenging, I have to say, but it was very relevant and applicable to the real world. I think the modules, and I know Peter touched on them in the previous slides, they're a great mix of topics that I personally had familiarity with, but also others that I had absolutely no knowledge of before, and they were completely uncharted territory for me. So I think it's really important to say that if you're looking at the modules and you're thinking, that kind of makes that means something to me, but maybe the others don't necessarily, I suppose that's the purpose of studying them. So I didn't let that kind of put me off, and I was glad to have you know, a fresh mind going into the modules that I had no real understanding of previously. And I suppose that's the whole point of learning, and, you know, it was certainly challenging but very rewarding. Then the second element that I touched on, the industry experience. Again, this was, I think I've said it already, really important to me. And it was a great means of being able to learn on the job, but also, I think, um, put a practical element and practice the skills that we had learned in the real world. So practice the methodologies or the concepts or the learnings from the university and actually utilize them in the host company. And for me, that allowed me to test out some of the college work and some of my assignments, and it allowed me to get instant feedback from real world problems, and I could reflect on that then and adapt that to my work as a result. So I think each complemented one another. The industry complemented the academic, and the academic complemented the industry really well. And again, I think the really important link for me was the industry link. But then the third link definitely was the Bord Bia element and the support network from Bord Bia. Not just the relationships and the networks, but the support that they provided through the thinking house, through the workshops that we were able to contribute to the events that Bord Bia create. It just creates a massive industry exposure, and it really truly is a privilege to be part of, and it really is unique, and it's something that I think those three things knit together really well, and really provided a really unique experience in this master's. So as I say, the course was challenging because for me it was learning a new way of thinking, and a new way of looking at problems, and a new way of finding solutions to them. And I think the biggest learning for me was developing the skills to equip myself to take on an ocean of, say, data from various different sources of research, to create something new and meaningful. So this is all about the innovation and creating something that's really, truly new and different and, you know, interesting, but also appealing to either the customers or the buyers. Say, for example, in the retailers, if you're talking to Tesco or Dunnes or SuperValu, that it actually means something, it's a point of difference for them. And that's, I suppose, the mindset I think that I had developed throughout the course. I think that will shape my future and my career going forward. So I suppose just to kind of wrap up, I suppose on a personal level in the program, I think it's really important to say as well that I made friends for life. We had a lot of different people from different backgrounds, but I think all our love for food definitely knitted us together, and then the challenges of the program helped us to learn together. On an academic level, I think I exceeded my own expectations of what I could achieve from being quite outside my comfort zone a lot of the time. So I think if that can be embraced, it's definitely something that will benefit the applicants or the students. And then on a professional level, I benefited from the program. This was the main reason I applied. I wanted to continue my progression in the food industry, rather than possibly getting comfortable or complacent. I wanted to challenge myself, and innovate better, come up with better ideas, and the course really, really equipped me to do that. So now I'm working in the marketing function of Valio Foods as a product development manager. So what that involves is the management of all our new branded projects for the likes of, say, Jacobs, Odlum's, Bachelor's. There's other brands, Kelkin Chef. It's a really big Irish company with really well-known, renowned brands. So it's a real privilege for me to be able to work in that space. And I think the benefit is that the role involves daily engagement with the insights team, branding, the commercial teams. We actually also work with Bord Bia on consumer research, ethnographic research, branding exercises. So I think to me that just is another illustration of how all of these things link in together, and how the industry, how it's so important to have those connections and relationships within the industry, which this program helps to build. So I definitely feel like it's a role that I've progressed into as a result of my new qualification and my new skill sets. And I think I'm very grateful for that. And I think if all of those achievements mean, you know, that I've developed in my professional career, it's great. But I think, just to say, I think I definitely developed personally as well. I have developed a mindset which has helped me to embrace ambiguity, think outside the box, look for new opportunities. So, you know, in terms of myself, I was lucky that I was able to progress directly into a new role in the food industry. But I think holistically, I think the program does so much more than that as well. So I definitely encourage anyone who's listening to give it a go, get an application in, and see where it takes you. Because for me, it was definitely the best, I suppose, risk and decision that I took, and it definitely paid off. So hopefully that gives a bit of an insight to my experience of the program. And as I said, I'd be delighted to take any questions here now or afterwards. I'd be absolutely happy to help anybody if they had any questions after.
Orla, thanks a million. That's a super story and a very positive one. So now Tom, myself, and Orla would be very happy to take questions if you have any. Take yourself off mute or use the chat function. But yeah, has anybody got any questions?
I have a question for Orla, if she wouldn't mind.
Yeah, of course.
I was just wondering, Orla, how did you find balancing the dissertation towards the end with the work you were doing?
Yeah, so it's actually a really good question, and something I probably should have covered off. The dissertation, and I think it's the same now, Peter, that the dissertation is directly linked with the work placement. So in my case, my dissertation was one that was based around the company that I was working in. So in terms of balancing that, I got great support from the company that I was working in terms of allowing my time and my resources to be put into that, you know, as part of my work function. And then also, obviously, I had the support of the university and the supervision from the academic side. But it was a challenge, and I think anybody who does any sort of further education, any sort of education at all, and tries to balance everything, will say it is a challenge. But I definitely think, in terms of from speaking from anybody else that I would have spoken to, any of my friends or colleagues who would have pursued further education and worked separately to their academic studies, they would have found it a much bigger challenge. Whereas because I was doing my dissertation on the company that I was working for, and because they allowed me the time and, as I said, the resources to pursue that, it was actually probably a much, I won't say easier, but it was much more manageable to balance the workload that way. And it also meant that it was really applicable to the company and to them. So they wanted me to spend the time on it so that they could get the most out of it as well. So it was kind of a mutual benefit. So I think for sure it was a challenge, but I think overall the balance was very well facilitated by the university and by the work placement as well. And I think that is the way it's going to continue this time round, Peter. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. That was a good answer, and thanks for the question, John. Yeah, I think if you were working in food innovation and then your dissertation was on medieval Irish or the great philosophers or something like that, then they would be very distant from one another. But in this case, both everyone has an interest in the success of innovation in this industry, the company, the student, Bord Bia, the university. So we're all aligned on making the projects academically rigorous, but largely applied. And I think Laura described it very well, the sort of support that you'd get for those things.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks for that.
Thanks, John. Anyone else?
Hi, how are you? It's Grania Brennan here. Just following on this relation to the studies, are there any continuous assessment or exams from the first few months in DCU related to the modules?
Okay, well, one of the reasons, anyway, there's no exams whatsoever in this whole thing. We don't have anything examined. So immediately you're put in teams working on projects, and each module will have a team component where you might look at an overall topic like sustainability generally, and then an individual component where you might drill it down into what does that mean for the meat industry or the beverage industry or something in horticulture. But we took a deliberate decision that most of this more professional or applied things don't do exams, because they really largely are just testing your memory, and we don't really need people. We don't want you not to have a good memory, but we don't want that to be the overarching feature. So it's all continuous assessment.
Great, thank you.
Hi, John Lamass here. Could I ask a question about the host companies? Are they already chosen in advance of the course? I assume we don't have to find one ourselves.
Yeah, I'll take that one. Yes, they are indeed. You're correct. They're all chosen by Bord Bia in advance, and we have a rigorous criteria in mind when it comes to the companies that the participant would be placed in, because we want you guys as well to have the best experience possible when you go into the company. So we select companies that are most receptive to this type of new thinking and innovation, which they would be brought to them. So
Okay.
the short answer is Bord Bia select the companies. And we also, in association with DCU, then we work with the companies to make sure they're fully briefed, and that they're best set up for success for themselves and for you guys who would be placed with them as well.
Right. Okay. And sorry, just to follow on from that, then, I mean, Orla mentioned it, but the dissertation that's done at the end of the course then is always or can be linked to what the applicant has been working on with the company.
Yeah, it generally is, John. It generally is something that's agreed with. One of the things that maybe we didn't mention is that alongside this program, there's a program manager. So there's you, there's the university, there's the host company, but we actually have a professional person who's helping you embed the learning. So for instance, if we do a workshop on agile ways of working or design thinking, we would start with doing a workshop in the host company to so that we're training a team as well as the individual. You would be the lead individual, of course, but that we're trying to upskill an industry, so not quite one person at a time, but we do have a dedicated resource that works with just these 15 people and their companies to help make sure that the learning is aligned. And as Tom says, the companies are very carefully chosen. They must have an ambition for growth through innovation, and they must have some budgetary resources to throw at it. And then they have to have you as the instrument to make it happen as the innovation champion in the firm. And then they have the university and the tools and the stuff as a way of facilitating it. And then we do have a program manager who helps you make sure that it gets traction in the firm.
Okay, very good.
And John, if I just add one other thing there, I guess, this program and the other ones that Bord Bia run, they're quite unique because they're a combination of you gain an academic qualification across all our programs on different disciplines, as I said earlier, but then you get real life work experience, which is, when I talk to all the participants on our program, is probably something they hugely value, because it's that ability to get real life hands-on experience. But you're not just thrown in at the deep end. So it's and the academic and the placement are not two separate worlds where the twain should never meet. There is between Bord Bia and also this program manager and myself, there are supports there to ensure that the two are interweaved, and that you're not left to fend for yourself when you go into a company, that you're monitored and you're supported and you're mentored as well.
Very good. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Hello. just a quick question leading on from that, I suppose, and probably relevant to Orla from her experience. But I was just wondering, in terms of how the modules are reflected in the placement, you know, some of the companies that you mentioned are quite large, and how do you get experience, say, in different parts of the course in the actual workplace environment? So if basically, like, are you put into one team, and are you in that team for the length of the placement, or is it rotated around, you know, the marketing side of the business versus the applications development side of the business, or how does that work?
Well, I don't know who should take that. We have that's Shauna, isn't it?
Shauna, yeah, sorry, I didn't even introduce myself.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. So there's a selection of companies. There were some companies, and we work with the candidates and we work with the companies too. Some companies, like Kerry and Bord Bia, have a world-class capacity, and therefore one might work in a narrow team, learning the, you know, superb, unparalleled practices in a specific area. And then other companies are more on the SME side, where Bord Bia and themselves have agreed that this is a path forward, growth through innovation, and therefore you get more broadly based experience doing loads of things, and in fact maybe often creating the architecture for innovation in the first place, setting up the teams, deciding on the priorities, looking at the potential platforms for innovation, and researching them and developing prototypes. So there isn't a one thing where you go into the marketing department, you work in the NPD department, you look at R&D, but the companies are also aware that you're special, that this is a special group of people who are hoped to play a very big role in the evolution of the entire industry. So you can end up, you know, we worked in partnership with you and the firm, but there are all sorts of outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that help, Shauna?
Yeah, I know it's a broad question, and I know it probably is different depending on where you end up in placement, but yeah.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all, really, Shauna.
Yeah,
like you
course.
know, I suppose if I look back on our last cohort, in the main they all stage roughly where, you know, in the roles that they started in or in the teams they started in, because we did a fairly good job of I suppose you know, marrying up the role with the participant, and we take factors into account such as your past experience as well, your ability to, you know, which environment could we see you thriving in better than others, you know.
Okay.
The type of personality, type of traits that somebody might have as well. So there's so many different factors that there isn't a plain answer we can give to that one, Shauna. Like, but what we do is, I suppose, again, because we've had many years across all our programs in gaining expertise on how do we best place somebody. We're quite adept at getting that right, looking at the personality involved and the skill sets they've had in their past, and the company we want to put them in, and the experience we want to give them, and getting that right, I would say, thankfully, most of the time.
Yeah. No, just that would be considered is important, but yeah, no, thanks for your answering that.
Thank you, Shauna. Anybody else with anything?
Hi, sorry, Fiona Drought here.
Hi,
hi, how are you? I just had a quick question for Orla. I just wondered if she had maybe an example of a project that she worked on within the host company, and maybe the outcome that they achieved of that project.
Yeah, of course. I think just from the one that sticks out the most, and I know I kind of touched on it already, but it really is kind of, I know it's been, you know, described as the capstone project. The dissertation really is the one that kind of, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, but contributes, I think, the most to the candidate or to the student, and also then to the host company as well. I think it's a lovely way to kind of wrap up the program, and I think it's a good example of a project that I worked on that kind of worked that I worked on with the company, but worked on for the company as well, I suppose. So to be a bit more specific, my dissertation was based on the new product development process within the company that I was in, and it involved applying design thinking principles to the NPD process to streamline it and to kind of improve it, or to help it achieve better results. So it was a very broad piece of work, I suppose, in terms of, you know, to describe it now, to kind of sum it up now. But just to kind of summarize it, it allowed me to use pretty much most of the modules, or the elements of the program that I had learned over the previous, say, would it have been maybe 18 months, and applied them then to the host company, to their NPD process. So that would be the process that involves taking a concept. So traditionally in the food industry, I think you'd be familiar that the concepts kind of generally start with an idea, and then they'll run through various stage gates in the company, which would kind of filter and kind of like a checklist to make sure that it's okay to move, say, from stage gate 1 to stage gate 2. So that could be ideation to prototyping, and then prototyping to factory trials, and factory trials to, you know, launch, to kind of simplify it. But I think by applying design thinking to that process, it allowed the company and me to help them to take a step back and to do a lot more focus and a lot more research on the initial stages. So sometimes the ones that would be often overlooked in the day-to-day NPD process, which, you know, is really if it's ignored at the start, it kind of results in a haphazard result. So I suppose by using the dissertation, I helped the company to do a lot more research, spend a lot more time and a lot more emphasis on consumer research, ethnographic research, you know, understanding the consumer needs, understanding the gaps that are there, and kind of interpreting that data a little bit better. And I suppose the output of the dissertation, and the aim and the output of it, was to create much more innovative but suitable products for either the Irish industry or if they were looking at the export industry, to make the product more suitable to the end consumer needs. So I suppose that's a very big example of what I would have classified probably my biggest contribution to the company. But hopefully it answers your question. I suppose it just shows that all of the learnings that I had taken on over the course of the program, I was able to kind of utilize them in a way that really benefited myself, but also the company then, and helped to streamline their NPD process overall.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thanks.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, that's great. I suppose also just on that, did you like come up with that project yourself, or was it a case of when you started within the company and you saw the systems, and then it was kind of a light bulb moment and said,
yeah,
maybe we can start to look at ways of improving their new product development?
I definitely say the latter. I definitely say that I think it's important to go into the company, kind of whatever host company it is, with an open mind, and to kind of take on board their ways of working. That would be my point of view, my personal point of view anyway, to take on board their ways of working and to learn kind of how it's done, and then to work with them to help improve how the way things are done, to hopefully result in better and more innovative and more desirable end products, or services, or whatever it might be. But I think I went in, obviously I would have had I think a year and a half under my belt before the dissertation started, so I had a really good understanding of the way things worked in the company. And then obviously I was supported in terms of the topic and how I chose it. I was definitely supported by the university, and my dissertation supervisor helped me to kind of hone down what exactly we wanted to do. And I think it was an element of, well, you can't do everything, so you have to kind of pick one thing. And we picked the thing that we thought would benefit, and kind of leave a leave the biggest kind of legacy, I suppose, overall, and to be kind of like a useful handbook going forward, that could be understood by, you know, colleagues after maybe I had left, and that was our real main goal. So yeah, I definitely think the latter. I definitely think, you know, going in with an open mind and kind of understanding the auditing the situation and being able to come up with something that's relevant to both yourself as a student, but also the host company as well. I think that was really important.
Well, thanks a million. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we have to draw proceedings to a close, but may I encourage you, if you are interested, we will have one further webinar, and that will be published. Details of that will be sent to you. But please do email your application, and the program, as I mentioned, will proceed. The commitment of Dublin City University and Bord Bia is absolute. And so we would love to hear from you. So this is if you could send a little cover letter and a CV to Bord Bia at DCU, and then we'll be calling people for interview and offering places towards the sometime in July. So the people are ready to give in notice if they need to, and get ready for the next step in a distinguished and fulfilling and hopefully rewarding career. So thank you very much. Anyway, if you have any residual questions, do send them to this email address, or drop me an email, or Tom. If you drop it to this email address, I'll direct all the questions to the appropriate person. So thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning, and I really do hope that we'll be hearing from many of you